Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to SSF's Business Services Spring Roundtable 2022. My name is Rakesh Sinha. I am the co-founder for Shared Services Forum, also the Executive Director and CEO for R Value Group and Quintus Global. An interesting day, an interesting topic to have a conversation with some industry stalwarts. But before we jump into the kind of conversation we are expecting to have, just briefly about Shared Services Forum. SSF is a growing community of business process management and shared services professionals, functional leaders, business technologists, and so on and so forth, across the levels and across the geographies and across the industry sectors. Shared Services Forum progresses with its own ethos and philosophy of three areas, if I have to say, and this has been the 11th year. So I feel quite proud to say that we have been quite successful with the kind of journey we had over the last 10 plus years. Looking at simply three things: how to bring the best practices and disseminate that knowledge, learning and challenges and failures across the industry colleagues and fraternity, through events, through research and publications. We look at excellence awards and recognition to recognize the extraordinary contribution made by the shared services leaders, as well as the organizations and the kind of value they were able to deliver back to the parent company. And the third, very clearly looking at setting up some next practices. What are the tools and frameworks which could be becoming a baseline or the benchmark for many aspiring organizations to achieve? And that is where we spent a lot of time in terms of creating research and frameworks and so on and so forth. Building on that ethos further, today's session is going to have some interesting deliberations about how to look at the overall future of the financial reporting, the statutory reporting, and the tax compliances, and really moving towards what we call center of expertise. Some organizations have beautifully achieved it over the last few years. They have leveraged as much as possible, also disrupted very well the existing processes, bringing in technology, etc., etc. And some organizations could catch up thanks to the pandemic in the last 2 years, where they realized that this is a great opportunity to leverage and move towards as much as possible of this disruption resulting into business impact. While we understand there'll be few who would be still catching up, challenging their internal requirements, the multiple stakeholders' views, and so on and so forth, because some of these are also very geography dependent, how the organization is designed in terms of and I don't mind sharing the word power centers and so on and so forth. And you leaders at the shared services leaders, or the leaders who are driving that change across the organizations globally, have a task cut out, which is not easy, which is very difficult, challenging, but at the same time very inspirational. And that's where it makes a huge difference. I take a lot of pride to say that today I have a panel, if I can say, which brings more than 200 years of experience together. And I think if we all continue to just converse for 90 minutes and maybe more than that, I think it itself will set a lot of benchmark. I'm very, very sure about that. We have 8 senior industry stalwarts here on this panel, and I would take the opportunity to invite them one by one to become part of this. But before that, as I start requesting them to be part of that, what I call as a mosaic spotlight, very important that all the leaders who have joined in live today, or the people who will be watching it later. As you know, this session is also run live right now, and there'll be people who will be logging in live. You can see all the details of the speaker profiles, and host is already going to put into the chat box. You will also see this all available on the event website, which is the part of the shared services forum portals, and you can go through them in detail. It has already been circulated, I'm told, over an email when the registration was done by the leaders who are participating. Besides live, this is also being webcasted, and it will be also available on the shared services forum portal for the peoples to watch later. And we have seen a lot of requests later in terms of repeat of looking at it, etc., etc. With this, I would also set a quick context in terms of how can people who have logged in live, how you can interact with us. You have a Q&A option, so you can't raise your hands or chat, etc., but certainly you can post your questions in the Q&A box. And besides that, the people who have logged in through YouTube or Facebook channels, you can post your questions there itself, and the backend team will pull in those questions and post some of the questions here, or send it to me directly for seeking input from the panelists here. Okay, with this, let me get you to meet with the panelists. I have, as I said, 8 industry stalwarts. I will start with Bhaskar Bhattachi. Bhaskar is a director, GBS, Chennai, FP&A leader, Philips. He brings 2 decades plus of experience. Can I have Bhaskar on the spotlight along with me? I'll request host to please put the spotlights. Hi, Bhaskar. He has been across the industry, disrupting organizations, creating some financial journey of transformation. And warm welcome to you, Bhaskar.
Thank you.
I have Samir Madan. He's a director of finance, Agilent Technologies. His qualification itself will speak more than the kind of work he has done. I think he's a qualified CA, he's a CPA from US, he's a cost and works accountant. And in the last 16 years at Agilent, and I think maybe before that also, but I think I have heard him a few times, and he comes with a lot of passion on technology and a firm believer of it. I'll say just not the advocate, but he's also an influencer, and he's also one of the guys who lead it by inspiring people. So warm welcome, Samir, and we'll have some interesting disruptive conversation. We have Rishabh Jain. He's the VP Finance, Global R2R Head, Olam GBS. Rishabh is also a qualified CA, and right now with Olam, he's leading a large team of 400 professionals serving 20 business units, 40 plus countries, and multiple functions of Olam. Welcome you, Rishabh, and I think we'll be learning a lot from you in this discussion. We have Meenal Maheshwari. Meenal is head of finance operations, Syngenta. Very passionate leader, grown up across the industry, starting with HLL, now with Syngenta, leading a larger team, large organization, and very much focused. I have seen whenever I've spoken with her talking about excellence, be it process, people, technology. And warm welcome to you, Meenal. Look forward to the discussions.
Thank you, Rakesh.
We have Ajay Wadhwa. He's a head of GBS Indorama Ventures. Ajay brings an interesting connect of, I'll say, the people, process, technology, and connecting the core systems like SAP, Ariba, and one side looking at lean, looking at cutting technologies, etc., driving those disruptions, business value delivery, work with different organizations, starting with Genpact to JP Morgan's to AG's, etc., etc. Ajay, warm welcome to you, and look forward to discussions. I have Karan Batra. Karan is the Director of Strategic Accounts, Lead SSC, APJ, and Emerging Markets. I think he represents a company, Thomson Reuters, and I think Thomson has got a multiple industry kind of an expertise, bringing some leading technology interventions across the areas like legal, risk, accounting, and media, and so on and so forth. Karan has led driving change and transformation, resulting significant operational cost savings. And I think one topic which is a lot of interest for me is about cricket, and but may not be the platform today to talk about it. Maybe separately with an IPL on, we'll have Karan more discussions around that separately. So welcome you, Karan, for that. We have Sandeep Tukari. I think Sandeep is yet to join, so we'll give him a minute. I think we have Kaushik Krishnaswamy Krishnan, who is a finance operations manager for IKEA Inca Group. And Kaushik brings some fantastic experience with the IKEA. And I think I remember Kaushik interacting with you at the time of the business services e-challenge, and the way you guys came across in terms of visualizing the pain area or the challenge and coming out of the solutions was wonderful. But as a part of your focus with decade plus of experience working with companies like Mondelez, Tetra Pak, Honeywell, and Deloitte, you have again gone through the mill of the change and the transformation. And I'm sure we'll have some fantastic experience to hear in this panel conversation. I hope very nice. Thank you. I hope I've invited everybody. I think Sandeep is stuck to some emergencies and he should be joining in a short while. Great. So I think we are all set now. I think, and my work has become, if I can say, minimal because given the kind of experience on the panel here, I think I have to just open the floor, and I think you all will be able to share a lot of great experiences, which is going to keep the audience very much engaged. The topic, as I said, is a very focused conversation on the this financial statutory reporting and tax compliances. While at a shared services forum, when we look at a lot of wider conversations, but this is a very important area, and this has come out with a lot of needs of the organization where they struggle sometimes, as I was sharing in the beginning, to really distinguish between what I call sometimes processes, and let me loosely say the word transactional processes, and what sometimes we call knowledge processes. While we can have different views, I have seen people saying taxation is a more knowledge, more transactional because it has a lot of rules defined, and what best you can have the rules because it's all regulatory, you can't change the rules. And hence you can do it much faster, better with the technology, etc., etc. Why are you taking a shelter under knowledge processes and creating more challenges? While there's a very different views, sometimes they're saying no, it will have its own impact, it will create challenges for the organization. We can go under a lot of difficulties and so on and so forth. Now with this, I would like one of my co-panelists to start with, and maybe Ajay, best to start with you, if you can share your thoughts. How are you seeing this whole compliance and reporting as a processes moving towards what we call the CoE, and that to connecting the dots with this whole change which has happened thanks to this pandemic? Because you have been into multiple avatars and you were changing it pre-pandemic in a different kind of an organizations, and you are also seeing it here. So if you can throw some lights and your experiential views in terms of how that has changed, how people are looking at compliance and reporting, and in your experiential journey, how do you see that change? Will be helpful to hear that as a starting point, Ajay. So over to you, Ajay.
Cool. Thanks, Rakesh. So when we talk about this compliance and reporting perspective and processes, and particularly when we talk about the statutory reporting process, and these are considered to be local specific processes, and generally people talk about that these cannot be outsourced or cannot be managed from a CoE locations. And that's where I go back and think that why is it so? Because I come from an experience like when I started my BPO career, I started with statutory reporting process for insurance companies. And that too way back in 2001. We used to do statutory reporting for the insurance companies, and we used to prepare the complete package and send it to all the 52 states, completely from India. And now after 20 years, when I have these kind of discussions that whether it can be done in a CoE or from any other location, that's a different kind of conversation which I get into. To me, the way I look at it, any process which doesn't require any licensing at the local place, or any any filing, particularly at that local level, that process can be managed from any other location. I mean, I'm not saying whether it has to be done from India or any other place. It can, that there can be a CoE for that process, whether we keep it at a headquarter or whether we keep it any outsourced location. So that's how it can be managed. And this scenario has drastically changed in the last 2 years. And in fact, mindset of the people also has changed towards this process, or and if I can extend it to any other process for that matter, which earlier people used to think that this cannot be done from any other place. Even if you look at hardcore finance processes as well, even the controllers, now we have talked about that we can probably put it at some other place, or can be done from a remote location. So this pandemic actually has changed the thought process completely, and any process which is, be it compliances or this statutory reporting, this tax compliances and all this can be done and are being done by companies in different GBS industry. In fact,
So Ajay, if I can interject, if I can interject to specific perspective here, what has been your own experience pre-pandemic when you had a conversation with the headquarters versus post-pandemic when you have a conversations with the headquarters? Are you finding there is a difference in their approach to respond to the thought process, or you find it still to be the same, or is it like you're taking the cover under the pandemic and trying to sell it more? So what is the difference on the specific approach from the headquarter will be helpful to know, particularly knowledge processes that we talked about.
In fact, Rakesh, my experience is a little different here. Now, earlier we used to have to go back and, okay, why can't this process be done from GBS, or why can't we do it from India? Now the discussion is altogether different. Now that's coming as a push to us, why these things cannot be done. So let's start doing that. And in fact, I had a discussion yesterday itself within the company. So why are we not moving everything which is non-core to GBS? I mean, these kind of high impact processes and high level discussions which has happened. So this pandemic actually has changed the complete thought process and mindset and all. And that's why I'm saying that the process which we used to do, and from my personal experience 20 years back, so this is something which is a very minimal thing which we take back to the industry. Now the level has gone much above post these 2 years of experience, and everybody is talking why anything cannot be done from a remote location. That's where it is.
Yeah, thanks Ajay. I'll come back to you. Just hold on.
If I may add, Rakesh, to the only thing which probably may need to be looked at differently is what are those technologies can be brought in to simplify the processes and can add value. And there are,
I'll come back to you on technologies, because I think it's a topic by itself for all of us to share a lot. And I'm sure you will have a lot to add and share on that. But before that, can I take a quick inputs from Kaushik and Minal, if they can be added to the mosaic as well as a spotlight. So Kaushik, your thoughts, how have you seen this changing in the last post-pandemic era, if I have to say, on some of the, and we are just still keeping that focus on the some of the knowledge-based processes. I'm still putting on the quotes because we all can deliberate and argue on it, and I don't want to get into that today. But as it has been defined to say this is the knowledge-based processes, we're talking about the statutory reporting or the tax compliances. What has been your experience in terms of the conversation with the geographies, in terms of the conversation with the parent, and and 2 years back and now? Maybe a quick perspective will be helpful, Kaushik.
So very similar to what Ajay was saying. I came with a track record of having done exactly this, what is the topic today. For another organization, we had done it successfully for 80 countries. And I came to IKEA and I started opening the same discussion. And I was told that you are pushing water up the hill. This will not happen here. And believe it or not, last week, I got into a discussion with, a group CFO and group taxation. How can you do it now? We remember you, when you joined, you had told us that this is possible. Can you help build a case where we can look to transition some of this work centralize some of this work. Can you help develop a game plan? So we are in a very happy place now, where the pandemic really has accelerated the entire thought process. How can we centralize even knowledge-based work like this? And I won't forget this. We have a group CFO who used to be the MD in India, in IKEA India. He actually in the meeting said, I think India is a great destination because forget tax work. You know, we countries, developed countries are outsourcing, launching satellites to India. So India is launching satellites on our behalf. I think they can do some tax returns on our behalf. That was a very powerful statement to make from the group CFO. We are in a very happy place.
Right. And I'm sure many of us on the panel would recall even the statement like snake charmers of the world. So it was like 20 years back, but great to hear the kind of encouraging statements, Kaushik, you mentioned about. Meenal, a lot of change, I know, for your organization, how it has been in terms of maintain the status quo and transform more of what you have in the GBS, or you are hearing that, okay, you can take more knowledge work from the regional locations, countries. What has been your experience?
Thanks, Rakesh, and really enjoyed the conversation so far in terms of the perspectives and the level of maturity of each organization to really come up the curve. With Syngenta, we've had our own challenges in terms of the integrations and mergers as an organization. However, the foundation has been very strong. That anything that is a process-based initiative has to be sourced from an operations location. So that remains one of our principles. And the pandemic has definitely proven that we don't really need to have all co-located talent in one place. It can be now the talent is really become very flexible. It can be sourced at the point where they exist. And that's opened up a bigger opportunity for us as GBS, not only in India. And I'm saying this because we have our locations of the centers across the globe. All of us have this opportunity now to look at talent, which is the right mix for the skills and the CoE that we want to build in. So some of the CoEs we have here in Pune, we do have talent which we have sourced from the Latin America countries. One is because we have a better opportunity to cover the time zone as well as the skill set. And cost arbitrage becoming one big topic has also given us an edge in terms of looking at some of these other countries as well from a hotspot perspective of talent, because we've been able to justify the costs as well. So I'm trying to broaden the topic. It's not just India, but also a competition that we have from other American or Latin American locations, which can become a strong hotspot for us to grow talent.
Sure. Absolutely. I think, and it's a very important point, and I think we'll have a deliberation on that as well in terms of the location too. But before that, I would like to add Karan to the discussion. And Karan, as you see within the organization and multi other organizations outside, how do you look at the thought process when you hear sometimes people talking about that they're still talking about some of these because of operational savings, or they're still talking more in terms of that I would get really the center of expertise, or they're still thinking of some technology will just help them and save them, etc. Or still people. So what two perspective, if I had to say, looking at more doing it from the savings and operational point of view versus looking at more creating that value delivery center of expertise. What has been your experience in recent past when you have dialogues with organizations within and outside of your organization? So your perspectives.
Yeah, no, thanks for the question, Rakesh, and thank you for the opportunity to be part of this discussion with a number of experienced folks on the panel. So I think what's been mentioned, I've just been taking some notes also over here. What Ajay has mentioned and Kaushik has mentioned is absolutely right, and what Meenal sort of rounded off. I'm not about 2021 and 2020. It was a watershed moment for GBSs, SSCs, GCCs, CoEs, whatever the acronym that's used popularly within the environment. But a couple of observations. I think what's happened is a lot of folks, the narrative has changed from the GBS. Now it could be the GBS is based in India or globally, where they're more sort of in tune and incorporated with the corporate strategy versus it just being as a separate organization that's run. So I think that's a big narrative change that's taking place. It's very much part of corporate strategy over there. I think the area that a lot of folks have been looking at is, let's just look at cost or labor arbitrage. We move, one headcount and yeah, I think that's one of the foregone conclusions. We're not looking at that as much, but is looking at that value side of things. How can we drive better standardization? How can we drive better productivity? How can we free up a lot of the folks to actually focus on, making sure that you're looking at things like effective tax rates, making sure compliances are done on time, closing times are done before, so you're not putting too much pressure on operations. So I think those are the areas that people are focusing on. I think slightly more mature or progressed GCCs, they've actually got finance controllers based out of their hubs over here. So you'll have, I wouldn't be surprised if there's a finance controller sitting for Europe or North America, actually based out of Malaysia, Bangalore, or even Gdansk for that matter, right? So that's the evolution that's taking place. A lot more of the ownership has come down to those particular GBSs. And I think the area that has really helped them derive that and get over those hurdles has been technology. We represent Thomson Reuters as a content legal technology company. A lot of the hurdles around global collaboration, around making sure translation takes place in country, data that's required is all managed by TR, and that's really facilitated and been easing the friction over there. So a narrative has changed, which is fantastic to see. The other aspect is that it's not just looking at cost, it's also about value driving and how that's really part of corporate strategy. And a client put it very effectively, right? And what Kaushik had said, Kaushik, I'm going to steal that line, I'm going to use it. We're sending satellites to other countries, why can't we file tax returns? I'm going to borrow that one. But a client put it very articulately, right? Gone are the days when they looked at India as well as GBSs as back offices. Now they've actually become the backbone of the organization. So I think that sums it up quite well.
Yeah. No, thanks, Karan. I think very well put in terms of some of the pointers and how that change is very visible, and you can touch and feel some of these changes very well said. Maybe I'll just take that point with Samir further, and maybe I'll request him to be part of this. I think, Samir, you have one is, I think, okay, let me ask the question differently. While people say pandemic has brought a lot of support to the kind of the strategic initiatives or the change or the disruptions we wanted to make, while I know, and I have spoken with you a few times in the past, you have led some of these changes much before even the pandemic really happened, right? Now, what is the narrative, as Karan was saying, from India to parent point of view for you? Has that narrative changed, or you are building on the same narrative what you had 2 years back by saying, forget about it, it's not about pandemic, it is about that value? So how do you look at that narrative from India to parent as you speak today, in your experiential views, Samir?
Sure, Rakesh, good to be with you all, and it's quite heartening to listen to my fellow panelists. So my view is that it's a natural progression. We've used the process shredded approach. I use this phrase a lot. We've shredded the processes and we've automated them mostly. In fact, people are talking about bots for AP. We've had a process where we expect our vendors to log on to our accounts payable portal, choose the PO which we gave them, upload all the invoices on their expense, and where is the need for a bot? What if the bot breaks down? And this is something which we learned from our customers. So when we were selling our products to the top pharma companies, to the top leading hospital companies and stuff like that, they were telling us to do it for our own trade invoices. So we've shredded the processes, and the latest phrase I use a lot is process shredded approach. And then what do you do with your employees, the high performing employees? It's the natural progression. And as leaders, it was our duty to convince our bosses sitting wherever they are that we are ready for more. Of course, satellites, and not just satellites. Every major corporation is headed by an Indian origin guy, although not an Indian, because guys who've gone there and settled are, in my view, not Indians. We are Indians, and we have to take this mantle forward. So there's a natural progression, one. Two, I think what's been there is the triple Ds. I call it data, digitization, and democracy for India. And I'll just come to the fact which Meenal picked up on how other centers are also complementing. So in India, we've been born and brought up, especially for accounting. I think India is a great place to get people a dime a dozen who can speak English and accounting at the same time. Now that's very important for an American or a UK-based company. So the democracy, the accounting, as well as English is something which is beautiful. Because I remember I was seconded to China some 15, 20 years back. And out there, the controller only used to say yes. He never knew how to say no. And as a controller, you all know that if you say only yes, 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 then you're in a soup. And my boss says, Samir, go to a small place called Dahlia, and it's so cold, I can't tell you. So the democracy factor also is very good for us. Digitization is, of course, the bedrock. You may call it technology, you may call it whatever you want it. But basic digitization is something which is available for everybody. And that's taken away the huge need for any formal degree, qualification, what have you. I mean, even on YouTube, there is beautiful tutorials on how to do hedging, how to take hedges, anything and everything. So digitization is great. And lastly, data. And I think in India, data has become quite cheap. And dare I say, Rakesh, so for the last few years, the increase in our CNB costs, which is the payroll cost, has been compensated by a decline in the connectivity. But now, suddenly everybody is wanting more money, as well as connectivity has gone up. So with this, in Agilent, we had our controllers sitting out of India some 9 years back. So there are 10 countries where physical controllers sit out of Manesar office. Of course, we also have a center in Barcelona to take care of the Spanish and the other exotic languages in Europe. And of course, we have a center in Penang to take care of the Eastern exotic languages. And I have a slide from Gartner, which I may want to share if you allow me now or later. But overall tone from the top, the ability for all of us to prove that we can do it, to make sure that we have the right talent, they're energized, and also the connect with our mother products. Now, I heard many speakers say GCC, other names. In Agilent, I never use the word GCC or a backroom or a globe. We consider ourselves as part of the extended finance community. And I think the psyche plays a lot of role. When I speak, I never use the word backroom, shared service, GCC, what have you, CoE. And that's what I kind of expect all of us to start doing, at least, the way we think. And as I said, technology is my biggest thing. Finance and technology are two sides of the same coin. I repeat that a lot. And you look at it now, even coins are not needed. Forget about credit cards. Now you have NFT. So everything is technology. There is nothing without technology. Embrace it. You have various applications. You just dump in the US GAAP trial balance, do some adjustments.
So Samir, I'll come back on technology. I know you'll be very passionately going to talk about it. So I'll come back on technology. But I think these 3 Ds was very, very powerful. And I think I'm sure a lot of people will be able to connect with that. Even what's in name you are challenging, and you're saying, you call it GIC, GCC, whatever it is, it's very, while
Shakespeare, I just quoted Shakespeare. What's in a name?
Right. So I think that's absolutely is a important perspective. While there is a relevance to sometimes the organization, how they connect in the organizational context, etc., etc. I think one very important point, and with this I will bring in Rishabh and Bhaskar to the conversation, and I can request the host to put them on the spotlights, please. While from a change enablement, stakeholder connect, etc., it becomes very important to link with some of these names in terms of, you call it Global Capability Center, Global Business Services, GICs. We have changed the names, and we have always talked about how to look at value delivery. And I think today This is something which I feel sad about being part of this industry, that some of these terminologies, we overuse it and we so much use it that it becomes, it loses its meaning sometimes, right? Even some of the transactional stuff we do and we say, oh, we have delivered value, without even understanding what it means and how it connects, etc., etc. And one side, we're talking about some of these processes which are very knowledge intensive. And when it's a knowledge intensive in terms of the impact this can create, like reporting processes, it has a very important impact. The decision transformation, as I call it, like, you can take a lot of decisions basis this, etc. So I'd request Rishabh and Bhaskar, and Bhaskar, I think I'll request Rishabh also to be added to the spotlight, please. So Bhaskar, maybe you can share your perspective and experience in terms of how you look at this balancing between this whole value delivery and with the knowledge processes, because we're talking about some of these reporting processes which are certainly decision enabling processes, really decision transformation areas. How you really connect that, because at the end, these are the processes which you do as a performance, but finally it results into value, no doubt about it. So how do you relate that in terms of value delivery and this knowledge processes? Will be good to hear your thought process, Bhaskar. First from you, and then I'll request Rishabh to add to it. So Bhaskar, over to you.
Thank you, Rakesh. No, maybe I will reflect on, let's say, one of my previous organizations as a use case to see how the start is always transactional, right? As a new CoE starts kind of, growing, and we kind of centralize, bring things together. But the real value delivery is once you've got some scale and you've built some capability of maybe technology is always an enabler. It's a constant kind of an improvement journey. But from a processes, some alignments are in place, yeah, there is a, let's say, seat on the global table for the CoE. Yeah? And then it's kind of, it turns in terms of, how you influence what I call actually either a global set of KPIs or maybe even business results. Yeah. Now, just to take an example, if I'm talking about one of the top 3 of the Fortune 500 list companies, and we were doing, let's say, some of the largest and the most complex tax returns filed in European countries, let's say UK or both UK and Netherlands for that matter. But the real contribution to the bottom line, for example, also started when there was a better accuracy, let's say, for forecasting, let's say, advanced tax. Yeah, so that's a direct, let's say, impact on the cash flow. Or, for example, helping the improving the global KPIs on compliance, for example, both in statutory reporting and taxes, which has an impact when the company gets into, let's say, joint ventures or in let's say, partnership with the government in certain types of deals and contracts, and there's a due diligence as part of the whole process. So even though it's a compliance process to start with, you're actually then in a position to enable the company to grow its business forward, maintain its cash flow, secure its, let's say, treasury planning, for example. The flow of dividends between the group companies right up to the top is only on the basis of accurate, let's say, interim or full year financials, for example. So, and the more the CoE kind of, owns and delivers on this. So just to take a previous speaker's example, so it ceases to be part of, let's say, a separate setup. It's an integral part of the overall finance organization. Let me hand over to Rishabh.
Yeah. Thanks.
Sure.
Rishabh, your experiential views on the question.
Sure. Thanks, Rakesh, and very interesting discussion, listening to all the panelists. So, Rakesh, I think our story in Olam has been a little different in Olam CPS. We actually, in the 1,000-odd people center that we have, the largest team of 400 odd is actually doing financial and management reporting. It's about statutory and financial reporting, right? And this is the largest tower that we have. And interestingly, unlike many other panelists talked about the transactional processes being the beginning, interestingly in Olam, it was the other way around, where we actually had the reporting processes as the beginning and developed a lot more on that. Just wanted to share that perspective. And close to 30 plus countries today, out of 60 or 65 plus countries of OLAM, that we actually do the financial reporting packs for the external IFRS reporting, which is then consolidated by a retained finance team to report it to the street, right? So interestingly, that's been the way we have come up. And there have been a lot of levers to this. I think it's the same people, process, technology that we talk about, right? That has led us to this place in terms of having the right capabilities and technology. I think you said we'll discuss more about that, but while there are traditional ERPs, I think there are a lot of modern technologies that are getting used for this. Now, coming to the point, the specific question on value delivery, right? I think in some of these high-end areas of work, it adds value in various ways. When you look at statutory financial reporting, the time within which you're able to report out the numbers, I think with the advent of and the growth of shared services or this industry in this space, it is only then that organizations are able to look at cutting down on that time. Because if you're reporting from different parts of the world in the retained organization and the processes are not centralized, the ability to standardize them becomes less. And when you're able to do that by centralizing at one function or location, that enables you to able to achieve standardization in the processes. While the output of this work is always standardized by the regulator, you know what to report, but how you get the inputs for it, how the process to collate it is different when it's not in a centralized place, but in various locations. So that standardization helps in terms of how you're able to cut down on time in terms of reporting. The other aspect of value, I believe, is usually this kind of complex or high-end work in the finance function or the retained organizations is done by senior finance professionals, right? Finance controllers of the world. The time that they are able to, the bandwidth they are able to get out of getting this done out of a shared services or a GICs or a GBS, as you call it, that value of how they're able to then enabling them to do a lot more business partnering for their core business team, I think is a tremendous value that we in OLAM have been able to see. And of course, there is the traditional cost arbitrage that comes. And what we have also visualized, I mean, what we have also done in some places is with this kind of capability developed, the kind of business insights that we're able to provide, right, with a lot more understanding of the core business operations, with a lot more understanding of, there are also cases where we have been able to understand the local tax regulations and been able to spot some disallowances or allowances which were otherwise not being claimed. So with that kind of experience and capabilities and processes being developed, I think that adds value is what my experience says, Rakesh.
Yeah, thanks. I think very well. And I think that's where I want to dive further into that conversation is some of the best practices which we believe that we have brought into our organizations or our experiential views. Again, in terms of the consolidation of some of the statutory reporting processes or these tax compliances, as we talk about the center of expertise. So it will be helpful to hear some of the best practices. And for that, I will request if Ajay and Kaushik, if you can share some of the nuggets where you believe these are the kind of differentiators which we have got in our environment or in my experiential views where we made a difference to the way we do these kind of processes, the way we perform this reporting processes or way we perform the tax compliances. We have brought in these kind of some changes which we believe is a differentiator. Will be helpful to hear from two of you. So maybe Kaushik, you want to take it first and then maybe Ajay.
Yeah, I think Samir said it very well, where he said we have a large contingent of people. We have a wide section of the population who can speak English as well as speak accounting, right? And these are two skills that our people learn not at a very high cost. So there is a good pipeline of people who have these skills. And, when I was a student, when I was doing the finance professional courses, I really used to curse the complex tax, regime and the statutory reporting regimes because it was tough to understand and learn. But what I realized is, if you go through this kind of complex, regime, it builds a good understanding to face or handle the work that comes from equally complex countries like, say, Belgium, Hungary, Italy, Germany, and so on. So what we've seen is when we set up internal shared service center that was serving a lot of countries and doing the tax and statutory accounting work, we had a really good supply of talented people coming in who were able to quickly learn the work, pick up the work, start delivering. B, and this is really surprising, that we also in our country have quite a lot of language skills. So we entered into an alliance with Max Muller Institute to train our people on German. We entered into partnerships with Alliance Francaise for French. We got access to a lot of people from Pondicherry who could speak French, who could deliver language services as well. And that was a shot in the arm for us, right? And lastly, we also have a section of people who have great learning agility. So what we realized is technology changes, we brought in new applications, bolt-on applications, enhanced the ERPs that we were working on. But through all this journey, we had people who showed tremendous learning agility to learn new things, perform in this new environment. So that was a key differentiator for us.
Well, I think well put in terms of particularly this language specific thing. You're right. I think besides the 30 odd local languages we have in India, we have a lot of other languages where people are very much interested. And a lot of these institutions certainly brings it. So that's a great experience in a thought process. Well, I have a very interesting questions on the talent itself, but I'll come to that. But before that, Ajay, over to you. Your views on some of the differentiators in these processes or best practices, as we call it.
I think Rakesh Kaushik has covered those two specific points which are important for these knowledge intensive processes, because this is all about how much knowledge a person brings in. And this, once this process is taken over, then it becomes people dependent as well, because then it becomes what kind of people we are bringing and how we are retaining them. So the way we kind of went about it, first of all, getting the right skill set and investing in those people, so that the statutory reporting for a particular country or a particular region, if we have to do that from India, that person needs to know about that entire process, not that the only portion which we need to do from India, but the entire, let's say if you are talking about local gap for a country or for a region, that person needs to have that complete knowledge to do justice to it. So investing into those people to understand that complete. So that's what the key aspect from a people perspective, and also ensuring that we have a good pipeline or a backup, because as I said, it becomes a people dependent process. So that is in-house and also from a pipeline from an outside perspective. We had a tie-up with other third party just in case there is an impact on the people in our company, then there is an immediate backfill of that. So that's where we covered the people aspect on that. Then the other key aspect for this process or this kind of a process is how we are bringing in the technology. Unfortunately, this is one process where we don't have those matured technology like we have for P2P and O2C and all. In this kind of a process, we really need to have those specific bolt-on technologies. For that, we really need to understand the requirement for that process or for that country or for that region, understanding it thoroughly and designing that bolt-on technologies to optimize the process and bringing in those efficiencies to drive the value. So those kind of things which we have done to ensure that we have the processes being done efficiently, and then the optimization through technology so that people and technology are being taken care of it. That's what we have gone about it.
I think some excellent perspectives in terms of the kind of differentiators you are trying to bring in. With this, I would like to take some thought process from Samir and maybe Bhaskar, more in terms of the kinds of the value chain. As we say, this is also when you talk about knowledge intensive, you move the value chain, the kind of processes. You all starts with somewhere and then you move the value chain. And I know in case of Agilent, Samir, as we were talking about a while back, that even a lot of controllers are sitting in India for 10 countries and so on and so forth. So you have more of the value chain in terms of the way you have brought your processes together, the maturity, etc. It will be good to hear some of the and in the boundaries of what we're talking about, the reporting, the statutory reporting, the financial reporting and tax compliances, that perspective, if you can share how you see you have moved the value chain, what are some best practices or differentiators you have experienced in your context, will be helpful to hear that, Samir. And maybe Bhaskar, you can add in terms of some of your experiential views of past, as well as what can be the art of possible, let me put it that way, which can add that maturity. So Samir, first from you in terms of your context, your experience, what are those differentiators and how you think you have seen that moving on the value chain on these processes. So over to you, Samir.
Sure, thanks, Rakesh. So again, it's not rocket science, it's quite simple. So you begin with elementary processes, and I heard one of my panelists said that they started the other way around, which is also fine. But the key is that you do not treat it like a shared service or a CoE GCC. So what we do is we make sure that we teach our business first to every analyst. We have videos of every factory. We teach what is the standard cost. So the more you get your entire population in sync with the business and not be looked upon as a back room or a shared service. And it is so important, Rakesh, I can't tell you, because as you speak to your folks in the US, UK, Germany, what have you, they get this feeling that this guy knows. So just the sheer understanding of the linkages, the business flows, how the economies work. Like, for example, I think sitting over here, take the hedges for my entire country. I do the analysis. What is the intercompany forecast going to be? Of course, like we have to have it blessed by the treasury folks sitting in the US. But the ability for you to see the end-to-end interlinkages is the key for you to ever even think about statutory reporting or consolidation at a local level or even at a US GAAP level. And the big sixes have happened or like have their entire army over here. Why would we be behind? In fact, we are the leaders. We've taught the big sixes to kind of come and follow us. It was the likes of American Express and GE, right, which forced the big sixes to wake up. We need to be agile. Now there are only two types of companies. Earlier they were big and small. Now they're fast and slow. You have to be a fast company. So coming back to the main question, so encourage all your associates or agents or analysts, whatever you want to call them, to get the knowledge of the business, each and every product line. Show them videos, because you can't have everybody travel to the factories. You can't have everybody meet up the sales guys. So that's the first part. Second, technology is available a dime a dozen. And always encourage and cross-sell one process to the other to create backups. One of the key things is we all work like silos, right? Every big company. Some are better, some are worse off. But the accounts payable guy, whatever little is left of accounts payable, is looking to move to, let's say, AR, which is more analytical. Make sure that once in a quarter, you're having some kind of a webcast to them explaining, what is done in AR vis-a-vis an ABRT, which is our Agilent Business Reporting Team, versus EFR versus whatever have, other terminology. I'm in CCO, which is Country Controllership Organization, or Corporate Controllership generally. So this cross linkages create that excitement, show them a path, and path, tell them, is not always up the ladder. You first have to move at a lateral level, and there's enough supply of our own employees who are willing to move over at the same level, at a lateral level, to learn, unlearn, and relearn. And as far as people are concerned, I prefer hiring from tier 3 to tier 5 cities. Tier 1 and tier 2 are gone. You won't get, very, very driven and, happy folks from tier 1 to tier 2 cities. Go to tier 3, tier 4, tier 5. They may not be able to speak so well in English, but hey, many of our process owners are from Latin America, sitting in the US, from all parts of the world. English is not their native language. And it's just so much of importance given to English, as long as you can understand English. And lastly, I would say that spend more time with your technology guys over a coffee, over water, or a drink. And technology is the only enabler, because US GAAP, all of us do. How do you convert that into the local legal gap? Whatever you call it, CU7 and Oracle, period 13, whatever technology you have to convert it, and use bolt-on applications. The key is every transactional tax return is being driven by another application, whether it's transfer pricing that's being done by HPCM or something else.
Yeah, so it will be good to hear, Samir, it will be good to hear some of the services that you're talking about, which can be done. I think I can tell you that people will be excited to hear some of the services which you're talking about can be done from India.
Anything and everything can be done. Now we have business controllers sitting out of India. So let me give you the most complicated or the most meaty example. It's about transfer pricing, right? You have to maintain a certain percentage of profit in every country. And the way things work, it doesn't happen. So you have to adjust the cost of goods sold each and every legal entity wise. So you track it every quarter to make sure that whatever you've agreed with tax, the IRS in the US, based on where your IP is lying, to be routed from that particular factory, that particular logistics center. So the entire analysis is done from India. The fact that we have AP, AR, intercompany, R2R, already there, and the smartest guys want to move on, it's a win-win situation. Now you have to go and convince your folks in the headquarters that we can do it. Start slowly, do a parallel run. So this transfer pricing, the entire thing is pretty much administered out of India. Of course, the oversight is in the US along with whoever your consultant are. The second example I'll give you is the whole tracking of whether every report has been filed in every country, whether it's transaction tax, whether it's HR, the entire reporting mechanism of every compliance, whether from finance, whether from legal, whether from HR. We have a portal which we own it and we publish dashboards. The business controllers are now beginning to sit out of India. The pandemic has only further reinforced that anything and everything can be done out of India. We have the largest internal audit team sitting out of India. So whether they go and do the internal audit for China as a country, P2P as a process, journal vouchers as a process. We recently ran a process how to reduce the number of journal entries. The business guys are posting journal entries for $11, and everything has a huge impact on the system performance, which we call the response time. And as I said earlier, now just the network costs, the telecom costs are going up. With the war, the insurance rates, we need to have a backup. Now the costs are beginning to rise. So we all have to move up to the value chain. And coming back, so we first moved the controller of Denmark to the India. And why did we do that? We realized that the compliance landscape in Denmark, which is Nordics basically, is so simple. They trust everything. You file a return, whatever is the refund, they give you the same day. And if I have a great command over my mother US GAAP transactional stuff, transactional accounting stuff, rest is just a natural progression. Hire the right guys, be a tech smart. Everything is available on YouTube. I can tell you, you don't even need to be a formally qualified CA, CCA, CPA, CWA, what have you. Everything is available. And the guys are willing to learn. Just believe in them, of course, handhold them, and partner with HR and technology. Partner with HR and technology. That's my take, Rakesh. Sorry.
I think some interesting examples which you quoted in terms of the nature of processes. And
end to end.
This is very powerful.
And move one to the other. Don't let anybody rust and rust. We have a policy that everybody should rotate. You give you the next level only if you've done 2, 3, 4 different kind of rotations. Otherwise, we'll rest and rust, Rakesh.
Absolutely. No, I think it's a good point. I think, and with this, I will request maybe Bhaskar, you can further build on in terms of specific examples, and maybe I'll request few of other panelists to come in as well to share more of their examples of the nature of moving in the value chain they have experienced. And I would request maybe Meenal to come in and then Rishabh to come in after that. So Bhaskar first to go, and then maybe Meenal and then Rishabh to share some of the your views or your experiences about the kind of moving of the value chain and the kind of extraordinary processes which used to be a difficult way to even think about as becoming part of the life. So if you can talk about that briefly, and I request you to keep it brief. I'm just trying to be conscious of the time because I want to cover 2 more topics. So if you can keep your responses brief will be helpful. So what you, Bhaskar?
Indeed. Thanks, Rakesh. So just maybe anecdotally, yeah. So when we started the statutory reporting process initially in my, let's say one of my previous organizations, yeah, it was embedded as part of people's roles in 70, 80 countries across the globe. There wasn't even a full-time person. There was somebody who was doing a finance controller role, and as part of his role or her role, they were doing this during their spare time. So when we started to collect data, okay, for all these hundreds of group companies we have, what's our, let's say, compliance status? How many did we file on time in this year, last year, the last before? We even found out there wasn't a complete repository. So that was a starting point to realize that's a problem, and what can we do to solve it by setting up a CoE, having the right skill sets, getting the work in, setting the processes in place. And over time, what really happened was that the organization as a whole started looking at this CoE as, let's say, the driver for the whole organization, and to do more, just about end-to-end the whole of it, yeah, just from planning to getting the packs done, to getting working with the auditors remotely, to get the audits cleared off, and then finally even coordinate board meetings where in some, for example, geographies, board meetings are part of the regulatory process, and then where the regulatory process permitted even having them filed online. So the entire responsibility and the entire accountability for the larger organization was kind of, part of this centralized process. Same way with tax, for example, yeah. So I think the majority of the organizations of these teams just kind of transcended from just pure transactional into just the end-to-end. I would say end-to-end from an overall corporate perspective, resulting in the KPIs which are at the global level, at the, let's say, the executive board level, example, directly linked to the performance coming out of this CoEs. Yeah, so you're actually in a position to deliver for the entire organization. And then the next step is really, if there is something that is not offshore for any reason, doesn't matter. You're still the total process owner. You just coordinate and get it done in country. If it's, let's say, there's no cost benefit, if there's no good reason or legal reason for not bringing it in. So I think I'll just take a pause here, maybe. Yeah.
Quick responses from Meenal and Rishabh. So Meenal, you and then Rishabh.
Thanks, Bhaskar. So, and it's been a journey, however, very clearly planned interventions that we have worked on. One is on the technology side to bring about the entire reporting landscape on one platform. So that was an investment and it required significant efforts by the transaction-oriented teams as well to create a strong platform for functional and financial reporting. And that will take us to the next level of now bringing in efficiency in the process. And already in Syngenta, we have about 80 countries being reported on a business day 3. We report our financials already on business day 3. And now with the technology leaping ahead, as well as a standard process being activated across, we are looking at how can we be more efficient. Of course, there is a cost and a balance of, do we want to really report financials on business day 1? What is the benefit of it? So those are the kind of values that we are trying to toy and assess. Where do we really benefit in the business? So one of them has been on creating a CoE for data and reporting. So the entire master data design and delivery organization, as well as reporting and analytics, is being created, coined, and delivered out of the center in the finance operations. And the way we see ourselves is, how do we add value for the future is to create different capabilities now in future as a service. So rather than having transactions as a service, we would like to develop ourselves on developing the capabilities in our teams and use those as a value addition to the business in future as a service. So for example, it can be project management. That can be a service we can offer to the business and make a winning team in the business.
Well, thanks, Milan. And I think I'll request Rishabh to come in. But before Rishabh, you come in, and I can see even Sandeep on the call. So I'll request Rishabh and Sandeep to add to the same perspective in terms of the kind of value chain you're talking about. But before that, I would like host to do a poll. Can I request host to put a poll up? Yeah. This is an audience poll, and everybody who has joined in can respond to it, including the speakers. Okay, here the question says, how have you consolidated or planning to consolidate tax compliance and statutory reporting services? You can select one option, consolidated in India GBS, consolidated at regional shared services, still in retained organization. So there's a plan to move over the next 12 to 18 months, or you are still yet to plan for it, but there's an intention to move it over the next 3 to 5 years of time. So please go ahead and start clicking your options. I request even all the panelists also to pick their responses. Of course, you will be picking the top two, I'm very sure, but still it will be helpful to add that perspective. Hope each one of you can just take this poll. We'll give another 40 seconds. Last 10 seconds, maybe. Okay, fine. I think so we can close the poll and can have our responses on the screen, please. Oh, interesting. So there are 34%. Of course, the speakers are balancing it well, if I have to say. Otherwise, we had a lot of other side of responses. I can see this graph is interesting to read it in a way. So we are seeing about 34% responses by saying already in India, GBS, 26% say that you are still distributed but consolidated in regional locations. 28% is having some plans, and 12% is still thinking about it. So there's about a 40%, if I have to put it that way, who are yet to get there, while there are 34% of the population who believes that they have gone to a top quartile. So that's the way I read this poll. And with this, I will request Rishabh and maybe Sandeep, if you're on the call, to come in and share your experiences of how you have moved to that consolidation in India GBS. What are those specific processes? Just take some examples and talk about some of those will be helpful for people to relate, particularly who are still intending to do it. Okay, this can be also be the art of possible. And just please keep your responses brief. So over to you, Rishabh, and then Sandeep to be added.
Sure. Thanks, Rakesh. No, I think our mantra itself has been, Rakesh, about moving up the value chain. And I would use the phrase which Samir was talking about, which is a natural progression. And this happens, I believe, even with the finance function moving up the value chain in their business partnering, as I was talking about. So last few years, we have seen this, that the finance function itself wants to look at a lot more of this controllership and what you call as a business performance reporting, right? Going down to the shared services in GBS in Olam, we have seen that trend. It happens, first of all, with some use cases, some pilots that you do, which kind of prove and establish that you can build that kind of capability at a GBS kind of a place, right? And when I talk about some of the specific processes, even things like accounting for your derivatives, like your futures and options in commodities, or accounting for your hedges, Samir was talking about, or reporting on your mark-to-market, performing a mark-to-market accounting and reporting on that, right? A lot of these high-end areas, which were probably thought to be a lot more complex and probably never possible for shared services, I think are happening, and we do it for all the products and businesses of Olam from the GBS. So I think one is to get the right capabilities. Some use cases and pilots which will help you build that confidence, and the word spreads in the organization, right? And there is definitely this I was talking about earlier on, as to how you bring that capability of best practice sharing that we talked about and standardize your processes. So I think when it comes to technology, one is I always believe technology as being a strong enabler, but for it to give you a scale benefit, again goes back to how you standardize your processes, right? So we started with, for this entire statutory reporting, on how we can have a standard chart of accounts for the first, right? Now with this world where today you do almost 4 or 5 acquisitions, I'm sure every company does that in a year. The sheer integration of all the acquisitions that you do, companies come with different ERPs, different source systems, right? On how you can have a standardized startup account, and that's not restricted to GLs, but to your cost centers, your profit centers, your material masters, right? So that entire thing, unless you get it right in one place or in one single ERP instance, for example, enabling you to do a reporting, a consolidation seamlessly in an automated kind of a platform doesn't work, right? So I think that standardization of your core processes, of your core chart of accounts, data elements, and org elements is a key first, I would say. And then on top of it, you've got, of course, the technologies like your business objects or the BIs of the world. And also one additional part of the cognitive element, which is there today, some experience that we have in terms of not all data sits in a single place in your ERP system, right? It could be in multiple different modules or multiple different screens, so to say, right? Now to be able to extract them, prepare your schedules for your statutory reporting doesn't always work, straight at a click of a button. So you may need some of these RPAs and cognitive technologies of the world, where we have some use cases, and that again helps to spread the word on how you're able to enable this kind of a reporting. So I think the right capabilities, the right technologies, a few pilots which would help spread the word, and the natural progression of the retained organization also in terms of where they want to spend their time on, has enabled us pick up a lot of these high-end areas and move up the value chain a lot more. That's been our experience. Right?
Sure. Absolutely. Sandeep, if you are there, yeah, if you can, I think we can't hear you. You're on a mute, Sandeep. If you can unmute.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you well. So Sandeep, over to you.
Okay, yeah. Apologize for being late. I was outside with some emergency. Talking about the investment and the value additions, yes, there are two keys. These are the two keys that need statutory reporting and the accounting process sustainable. In my view, technology is a second priority. What's the priority is the skill and competence of the resource doing it. How that adds value is why I say the resource are key, because if we have a right competence to deliver the job, to understand the gaps, to map it to the existing process and deliver that right from a local gaps to the corporate gap, that streamlines the process. Talking about the technology, it depends how many entities you are looking at it. So you'll have to see the cost of bringing in your technology, whether it break evens, how many years it break evens, because your CFO not gonna give you to spill the cost over 2 to 3 years. So the break even, having the free cash flow generated out of the savings that we have is a key to me. What value additions we have to bring? Stat reporting, tax compliance, these are a few areas. Apart from that, doing the PBCs provided by a client, how do we automate those PBCs? Those are the key elements to me. Apart from that, what value addition this team can bring in is how do they support the corporate audit, right? We work for the MNCs. So how they support the corporate audit as we are part of a GBSC, right? We don't do only statutory reporting, we do fixed assets, inventories, we do tax, and so on and so forth. So what are the value additions that we can do in terms of supporting the corporate auditor as a part of GBSC? So that these are, and I know Rakesh, you asked me to be brief. I can talk about it, but these are the key elements for me to be successful in a stat audit process.
Yeah. No, thanks for this quick perspective, Sandeep. And I know this is an interesting view, and that is where I would like to take a little of a shift in the discussion now. We spoke about processes. We spoke about, of course, the talent and the talent availability, how to encourage talent, etc., etc. We also talked about even the challenges of the talent availability, etc. I would like to talk more about technology. Two parts to it. Before I move to the technology, and I will request maybe Karan and Samir to come in as a part of this discussion now. But before that, there are some Q&A questions here. While I'm trying to cover some of it as a part of discussion itself, but any of you can pick those questions in the Q&A and you can respond that as a part of a response to this Q&A chat itself, while we'll pick some as a part of the discussion. So Karan, I think very interesting views sometimes when people say, you know, technology. I think even in the beginning of this discussion, we also heard sometimes some of these transactional processes like P2P, O2C, if I had to say, there's a lot of bolt-on tools which has become very prevalent these days, and you know, of a different statures, if I have to say, in terms of low cost to high cost, some low code platform where you can do your own coding, etc., and create it. So automation is part of the life. And I can tell you from a shared services forum point of view, one of the learning which we got was, and we challenged it about 5 to 6 years back ourselves, where we say, you know, we used to talk about ITES, IT enabled services, 2.5 decades back, when even in mid 90s it started. And till date, you will find people saying ITES, and we felt, oh, it's not okay. And that's where in 2016, we coined a framework called TIPS, the Tech Integrated Business Services. We said, you know what, you can't have process and technology separately. You have to see them together if you really want to do it. Having said that, there are some of the processes and the kind of space we're talking about. There is a real struggle in terms of finding the right balance of technology, right? It will be good to hear your experiential views, how technology can enable some of that for the reporting. And I'm not talking specific reporting, more of statutory reporting, some of the tax compliances and those kind of areas, how it can be really helpful. So if you can bring some thoughts there. And maybe Samir, you can build further on it. I think this is your a lot of passion area in terms of technology. You can further build on it, guys. So over to both of you,
Sure.
First to Karan and then to Samir.
Sure, Rakesh. And I think there was a question by Jasmeet also, which could kind of, you know, I'll try and respond to that also. So in terms of, you know, what are the challenges that organizations currently face? So I think there's a step back on a couple of things. I think the first aspect is Word and Excel is not technology. So if you have someone who's sitting and writing macros in Excel and say, you know what, I've actually got a platform, that's actually not technology. That's just Word and Excel. And Microsoft's done a phenomenal job. Love Microsoft, but great branding from that perspective. So I think the shift and the mindset shift has to be away from Word and Excel and macros and move on to SaaS platforms that are built for purpose. I think that's the first aspect. The other area is around the challenges. Now, the only thing that is constant is the speed of change. So if you look at Europe, for that matter, you've got so many different tax regulations that come into play. You've got SII, UKMTD, SAFT, and I think a whole bunch of other, you know, regulations that are coming in. And the whole idea is that a lot of these countries are looking at increasing their tax, you know, revenue more than anything else. So e-commerce is being taxed. How do you sort of, you know, make sure they fill up those coffers that are being spent on, you know, on the pandemic side of things? So you're going to see a lot more regulation. There is a lot more oversight. There is a lot more information that corporates have to now deliver to regulatory authorities, which puts a strain on operations and teams. So that's a big challenge which is over there. The other aspect is the cost of compliance, right? If you get, and I know a few organizations that have got their taxation wrong, besides impacting their cash flows, they're also impacted from fines as well as levies that they've got to pay. So that's another area. Another intangible that you've got to look at is the fact that you have reputational damage. You don't want to be in the news saying that there has been a shortage of payment of taxes or compliance issues for an organization, right? So I think those are the aspects. The other area is around, one of the challenges is managing your auditors' costs. The fact is that they run through, the cost can be really prohibitive at times, especially if your process is not standardized in various locations. that you've got to look at. So those are a number of challenges that are coming out, from a regulatory change perspective, your cash flow management, as well as possibly from a reputation perspective. Now, how does technology actually play a role in this? Now, you have your standard, I would say, frameworks or technology empty boxes that are there. But I think the new era is going to be about content-enabled technology. So it's about expert systems that provide you all that content inbuilt as a SaaS platform. So, firms and organizations don't have to worry about regulation changes that are taking place. It's updated in the near real-time side of things. From a stat reporting perspective, you've got to make sure that your disclosures are accurate for that particular jurisdiction. How do you make sure you're using the right jurisdiction template? How do you make sure you got the content and the disclosures right? So that is all now managed. You don't have to worry about that. That's built into SaaS platforms over there. So I think that's where the era is moving towards. It's not just, empty boxes. It's about, content-enabled smart expert system technologies. I think the third aspect is it's digital transformations. Transformation is a huge word, and there are a number of organizations are going through now because of S/4HANA migrations, etc. Those are long, winded pieces where you probably see ROI business cases delivering after 5 to 7 years, right? Because you've got to do an entire process change, etc. What firms are looking at, and I think Rishabh alluded to this earlier, is about how do you do digital adoption? How can you have a quick hit? How do you show quick success? Make sure that you streamline your process within 6 to 9 months and really have an impact on the organization and the operation. So I think that's the mindset shift that's going to take place over there. The other aspect is, and the last piece before I hand over to Samir is, what are the challenges faced? So the biggest challenge that I've come across, talking to clients, etc., is change management. That's extremely important. You've got the technology, you've got the people, have you got everybody on board, be it your folks internally, your folks, your partners, and are ready to go on that change management journey? Because that could really be the essence of what is a success and what is not. So I think that was the only aspect. I know some of you smiled at the fact that I mentioned that Word and Excel is not technology, but that's one thing I want to leave the team. Look at specialist expert systems that are content enabled for the future.
Yeah, quickly just to add, Karan. So you're right. I mean, SaaS and pay-for-use platforms really help us. So technology, while is a very important thing, at best it's an enabler, right? In the sense that you need to have people to be able to check what technology throws at you. So what does technology do? It throws data and gives you a trend. But is that trend your friend? That's something that you have to do. Machines are getting intelligent, but we need to become even more intelligent than the machines rather than becoming dumb. So we have a huge tax technology team. Like, for example, Karan said the change in GSTs in India, VAT here and there, which we keep getting patches from our service providers, but we still got to test them. That's a separate team. And then there is a technology team embedded into actual operations. In fact, we don't even look at technology or IT as a separate function. As I said, we are like Siamese twins, operation, whether it's finance or your invoice issuing or HR. Everything is technology, whether it's Workday for HR. Can HR survive without Workday? Everything is technology. Learn to play with it. Yes, you have to have the control over your trial balance. I remember those technology days, and I'm probably the oldest in this group, it seems like. But in the mid-90s, I remember, just for those of our clients, I used to be in PwC, actually Coopers and Lybrand. At that time, the firms hadn't even merged. So a Tally trial balance used to get us a beer. And then there were days when, every journal voucher was inputted by the EDP department. Somebody used to check it and what have you. So technology has moved on so much, but it's still, we have to vet the numbers it is giving. Whether all the local legal adjustments for tax, depreciation, lease accounting I do for the local legal compared to the US GAAP, which is done by the entire set of teams, that's in a separate shell. Somebody has to check it. Technology only gives you that platform, but without that, you will fail. And I think these days with pay-for-use, technology available, like he said, SaaS, it really makes your life easier. And count on the ecosystem. So for example, if there is a disclosure change in UK or Ireland, where the controller is sitting out of India, I will have my local legal auditor telling me the applications that I use. I won't name them. One of them is also by Karan's organization, but there are others which will prompt you that these are the changes. Every week, every month, we get updates as to what's happening in the changing landscape? Is there any disclosure, something else to be added, which anyway some team is tracking, right? Whether it's my trade team, whether it's my HR team, whether it's something else. So the company is anyway on top of it. Just be in touch with each other. You will get whatever you need. The net is your friend. Technology is something which you should learn to master. But without technology, you can't go far. That's my message, Rakesh.
Yeah, no, I think thanks, Karan and Samir, for being that perspective. And as I always believe that there'll be different views and perspective, and we all will have their own maturity in the journey, in the entire transformational initiatives which we are trying to have, and accordingly what works for one organization, you should learn from it and try to see how it works for your context and so on and so forth. I think we still have a couple of minutes, and I would like to do a quick rapid fire. And can I have everybody on the screen, please? I think one of the interesting questions which has come up in the Q&A is this whole month end. I mean, let me articulate it differently by saying, is it a month end pain? Is a created pain, or is it something which is a real? If I had to say, maybe Meenal, you want to respond to it, because I heard you saying there are two kinds of journey and experiences which you have. So how do you see the month end? You have to be very brief. As I said, it's a rapid fire, so just keep it like a few seconds, please.
Yeah, absolutely. So one needs to have a strong process and technology to really have a smart month end, and you need a good close process. But I see a benefit in doing a faster month end, so that then results can be really used by the business for actions, which can generate benefits in the next month, and which you can, or the coming months, so you can validate. So I am a strong promoter of a smart close of a month end. Not an accurate one. No journals of $11, please.
Good. Kaushik, how do you see this whole the contrary views in terms of looking at, and I'm using consciously this word contrary views, in terms of looking at having a technology and then driving both tangible and intangible benefits, versus looking at by saying, this is my processes, standardization stuff, etc., and I need to find what is the right fit. How do you look at that? And in your organizational context, what has been the success?
I think there are many ways to the top of the mountain, right? Everybody wants to get to the top. There are many ways to do it. One big thing that drives, the path that you want to take is, what is the DNA of the company, right? If it is a company that has always leveraged technology as a competitive advantage in their business, they're always prone to take the technology route and then rearrange, the processes and reach where they want to reach. That's a perfectly fine way to do it. There have been other companies who have looked at the business processes and said, this is the business process. This is what we want to deliver for our customer. How can technology enable us to get here, right? So both perfectly valid. So it's a question of what's the credo for the company, what's their culture, what's their strategy. They are both proven models. But what is important is the company does not change horses midstream. Once having chosen a technology route towards optimization or transformation, they suddenly shouldn't change horses midstream and say, you know what, I think business process is more important, let me come that way, or vice versa.
Right. Sure. Karan, any experience you have got in this? There's a question in terms of the CoE for GST. Any areas where you are finding, or any organizations?
Yeah, I think folks, you don't have a choice but to set up a CoE for GST. It's so complex, you need to have a center of excellence. No, jokes apart over there, I think again, folks do have a central team. It's a CoE and not that separate. But the fact that, for India, at least, we've looked at the taxation system with a technology lens. So there are a number of bolt-on solutions that help you with the reconciliation with the taxation side. So I would say a central team, but not necessarily CoEs.
Right. How would you say, Bhaskar, based on your experience in terms of the point which I was saying in the beginning, that sometimes this tax compliances and these reporting processes, particularly the tax compliances, comes with more, or regulatory processes comes with more, rules and structures. And while we have created a lot of, hype around it, in terms of making it knowledge intensive. What is your view? It is too complex to do, or you believe that some of these could be done easily?
No, it's a mix of both. I think there are parts of the process which are you can frame it as transactional, standardize it, and do up to a certain point. But I think if you're talking of really large multinational companies with complexities of of cross country trades and all that, then of course there is the knowledge and the, let's say, the complexity comes in, which is pretty much judgmental in terms of, somebody has to decide the right options in terms of what tax strategies to actually take in a certain year that can offset or that can give benefits in the next year, so on and so forth. So I think it's a combination of both. The first part you can definitely adapt with technology, speed it up, you can standardize as much as possible. The second part is all about getting the capability in, building on that knowledge, retaining that knowledge as well, and constantly keeping updated on that. So it's a combination of both, I would say.
Yeah. I think I've overshot by a few minutes, but I still want to take one quick question with you, Rishabh and Samir, if you can just quickly give your perspectives on the talent, because I think there is a lot of this talent war which is on in terms of the great attrition as we're talking about, and with the experienced talents being poached, if I can use that word. How do you see that in your context? Is it becoming a challenge for you, or is it something which you're able to overcome through the use of technology? So first from you, Rishabh, and then Samir, you can add to it.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely one of the biggest challenges, Rakesh, being seen currently. I think the entire industry is facing that. There are some never before heard attrition numbers that we are hearing from the biggies outside there as well. So I think a lot of innovation, I won't say too much of technology intervention there, but probably quite a bit of innovation in terms of where you source your talent from. I would go back to what Samir was talking about. Interestingly, tier 5 and tier 6, right, and not just tier 1 and 2. So I think our sourcing strategies will have to be different in the current environment. Our learning and development strategy will have to be different. It cannot always be that you get somebody who's just fitting into what you need, but probably get somebody who fits a bit of that, and a bit more needs to be groomed and developed. So I think we will have to, yes, we are definitely facing that challenge. One is also about how you're able to retain your existing talent and not let it get poached through various different strategies that you can have for that. The second is about where you source it from. And the third, as I said, is about how you can groom and not just find the best fit available for the job you have at hand. That's my take.
Thanks, Rishabh. Samir, quick thoughts from you.
Yeah, so I think tier 3 to tier 5 have the right skilled person, neither overskilled nor underskilled. This industry has done a big disservice by hiring overqualified people. And to begin with, it's probably okay because it's a proof of concept, then they become a liability. So hire the right skill, neither overskilled or underskilled. And lastly, we have to lead by examples. If they find leaders like us sticking on, they will feel happier, more reassured, be the leading edge in technology, speak with them, motivate them, tell your global CEO, global CFOs to come pay visit, learn every day, unlearn and then relearn.
Sure. Thanks. Sandeep, we have not got much of your experiences today. I think you had to travel, but I realized that you're still on.
So yeah, I'm on. Yeah.
So some quick comments from you in terms of wrapping comments, if I had to say, as a takeaway for the people who have logged in or who are going to watch it later. Your experience in terms of how do you look at the overall statutory reporting and tax compliance as CoE. So quick wrapping up comments from you would be helpful, Sandeep.
Yeah, I think the one question that you asked was on a month end, and also the statutory reporting is a yearly processes. So technology plays a key role. How the process gets streamlined is again dependent on two things: your technology and your staff. Technology may not go off sick. They may not fall ill, or they won't get COVID. So you get them 24/7. So that's an advantage. if people are not able to perform, then technology comes into the picture. So you have a strong technology backup. If your organization is strongly backed up with the technology, your month end, your statutory reporting process becomes smooth. Like having the right adjustment, preparing the financial statement, putting up the annexures, notes, predefined, or converting it into the different language. But to get there, we have to customize the tools and the technologies, right? So the right staff is again important. Having those available to deliver the job is a key in a changing environment of a globalization and a lot of regulations that are changing. So technology can be feeded in, but who can feed is again a staff. So that's where my statutory reporting process of skill competence, building the knowledge, developing the gap informations, and preparing the work papers for the auditors to get it streamly audited. So these were few key additions from my perspective. Okay.
Thanks, Sandeep. Thanks, Sandeep. Really, really helpful. Karan, closing comments from you, and then I will close the discussions.
Yeah, no, I know we've run over time. So I think technology is the future. Content-enabled technology is the future. And I think the terms, whatever you'd like to call it, GBSs, GCCs, CoEs, is the path for the future for at least India over the next decade or so. So exciting space, lot of opportunities for everyone, and look forward to sort of how this accelerates.
Thank you everyone, and thanks all the speakers, panelists who taking this time out amidst your busy schedule, sharing your perspective, your experiential journey, how each one of us can get benefited by the learnings which you all had pre-COVID, post-COVID, the kind of journey which you're already taking on, how the technology really becomes the integrated part of the journey. But at the same point of time, you need to have an excellent balance with the people, process, and the change, or the stakeholder, if I have to say, it becomes very, very important. So thank you, everyone, and have a great evening ahead. It was lovely being here today evening. Thank you.